Fantasy Football Happy Hour with Matthew Berry, served by Applebee's.
Welcome to the Fantasy Football Happy Hour. Happy Monday. Connor Rogers, Matthew Berry, Jay Croucher back from the Steel City, lads.
Yeah.
How was it?
It was great. The morning was great. I'll say this. We did our show at Applebee's Fantasy Football pregame. Pittsburgh showed up in a big way. Lines out the door. Great questions from the crowd. Great energy. People brought their fiancés, their wives, their kids. It was awesome. It was legitimately awesome.
Yeah, a lot of really nice people. It was good chatting to everyone afterwards. Really fun morning in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, really fun
morning.
morning.
After the morning or not?
It's just going to derail us. It's just going to derail us. We went to the stadium and it was. I'm sure. I'll just leave it at this. I'm sure there are, because the Acrisure Stadium is a big place.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's a lot of people that work at Acrisure Stadium that are very nice.
I've met a lot of them.
Did you? Because I didn't meet one of them.
Oh, God.
It was just like I found the new League of Assholes, and they all work at Acrisure Stadium.
Really?
Oh, it's awful. I literally got yelled at. I'm like, I had to say to the guy, I'm like, stop.
I was there. It was
I
great.
know, right? And I'm like,
night.
why are you yelling at me? I literally said like that. He's like, you're blocking my entrance. And I'm like, I'm standing where you asked me to stand.
Oh, wow.
He goes, well, you're blocking my entrance now. And I'm like, dude, I'm happy to calm down. You don't need to yell. Like it was definitely an experience. I'm just like, I'm glad you met some nice people there. I'm sure there are.
I had some difficulty locating my media credential. Everyone was super helpful to me.
Okay, there you go.
So I met some great people.
Okay.
The guy that we encountered wasn't as good.
Yeah, that guy was an asshole. Anyway, so whatever. It's, the Steelers lost a tough one. As a Commanders fan, by the way, I'm wearing Faith in 5. I'm wearing this every single Monday we win.
It feels that way.
I mean, it feels that way because it is.
Yeah.
I have. Like, as he keeps winning and keeps putting up, I got to represent, right?
Stay hot, Jaden Daniels.
Yeah, respect though.
Hashtag
respect though.
Make the dry cleaners some money.
I'm telling you
think
what.
it's never gonna
By the way, I'm told this is the hottest selling jersey in the NFL right now.
I would actually believe that.
Oh yeah.
I
Man, people can't get enough of their
rookie.
5. Potential Rookie of the Year, future MVP,
If you're a
future Super Bowl
Commanders fan,
champion.
what jersey are you
Could be
buying?
MVP this year.
Could be MVP
Very
this
well
year.
could be.
Like 10-1.
Could be
It's
champion.
unbelievable.
Could be Super Bowl champion this year. Who knows?
It's unbelievable.
We're 4-1. Anyway,
Well,
you know who isn't 4-1? The Steelers. That's karma for for that
Mean local.
Yeah, it was a little. He was like a Paul Blart, a mall cop guy.
But he was the opposite of the guy that just goes like that and lets people
He
through.
was the exact opposite of that.
This guy was all
He was
business.
very intense. Very intense.
He could sense that you were up to something.
Yeah, trying to get through a door.
Yeah. He didn't trust you.
A door that I had right to be in, and a door that I wouldn't been invited to.
His
But
intuition.
the whole thing. At any rate, but yeah, it's karma. That's why the Steelers lost. I'm just telling you. But I was rooting for the Steelers because who wants the Cowboys to get a win getting closer to my first place Commanders. But anyway, but Applebee's was amazing. We had a great time. Thank you to the Pittsburgh Applebee's that hosted us, and thank you to everyone that came out. One guy flew in from Detroit.
Just for the show.
He literally is just like, it's my bye week, so I flew in for the show. I'm like, all right, God bless.
That's dedication.
Yeah, one pride.
Shout out to him.
One pride to that guy.
We got Weekend Warriors for you. We got Sunday Scaries. Before we do any of that, we start with our Rotoworld Player news. And in the Steelers division was the best game of the weekend, the Ravens and Bengals. The Ravens pull off a thriller 41-38 on the back of Lamar Jackson. And after the game, we got to hear a lot of praise for Lamar from his teammates.
That was like third MVP level for him. Best player in the league. He's a GOAT for a reason.
I never cease to be amazed, but I'm always amazed. And then just the way he plays the game, it's unparalleled.
But different, man. Like, I'm just wondering when we gonna start talking about it. like the man different. He do everything.
It's cool. I don't know. It's cool.
I love Lamar's reaction after all that.
Right.
It's cool.
It's cool.
Just another day for Lamar Jackson.
Yeah. That's what I was like after the Applebee show. Everyone's just saying like, "Oh my God,
Everyone
it
there
was
was
amazing
like,
the way you
oh,
answered the questions,
Matthew Berry.
Yeah, the way you sucked down the dollar zombies, and still was given
Suck down the dollar zombies.
I really did.
That's a great way to describe it.
Especially with the pause in between. The way you suck
but
down.
If you see the
Dollar
post-show
zombies.
interviews with like Jay and Lawrence and George, they were like,
What'd you think of your leader's
what do you
performance
think?
today?
Yeah, exactly. And I was just, so it's just like, it's cool.
Yes. The zombie gummy garnish, you're a big fan of.
Big fan.
They put these little gummy bears in the bill of zombies. Yeah, they're a big hit.
Yeah,
This
big
is just
hit.
keep ordering them.
Yeah, like the new cherries in an old fashioned. The zombie gummy garnish.
Oh my goodness. Well, despite all of that,
ZGG.
as we showed you, Lamar Jackson did not finish his QB1 this weekend. There was a lot of
Ridiculous.
huge performances. Kirk Cousins still holds on to that from Thursday, but Lamar QB3, 33.4 fantasy points, Matthew, and he had it working on the ground and especially working through the air.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that there's a takeaway here other than like,
You're gonna start him.
Lamar Jackson's awesome, right? And by the way, Lawrence has him in our league, and
Did things not go well for you?
no, they did not in the League of Assholes.
Fantasy Life commenters back.
Yeah, I saw
Yes.
that. I saw that. Well done. Well done. Lawrence used a very good performance from Lamar Jackson, and then also everybody that has sucked all year long finally had a big week this week. The Kyle Pittses of the world, Keon Coleman.
That's when you're down bad.
Keon Coleman. He got Jaleel McLaughlin, 3 rushes for 3 yards and a touchdown. Everyone that Lawrence has started all these terrible people that all had awful, amazing games. It was just annoying. So anyway, he's down by. I'm leading him by 5. I have the 3rd highest score in the league so far. But I'm leading him by 5, but he's got Rashid Shaheed tonight. So
Which is interesting because Shaheed could either have 30 points or 3.
I know, but I'm in a guillotine league as well where I have Shaheed, and I need Shaheed to have a nice game. So it's one of those things that I just know what's going to happen is Shaheed's going to have 7 points, enough to beat me, but not enough to keep me alive in the guillotine league because Breece Hall killed me there. We'll get to that. But I was going to say the 2 things that my 2 big takeaways from this Ravens game. Lamar's awesome. It was nice to see that they were attacking down the field. Average depth of target 9.01 in this one. That's his season high. So they were attacking it down the field. Zay Flowers was a big beneficiary as well. 29% target share here. Zay Flowers has been involved in every game the Ravens play where that's close. I mean, it's just when they're blowing teams out, they're just not throwing. But so in a game that was close, Zay Flowers was used, which was great to see. 3 tight end touchdowns in this game. None of them for Mark Andrews.
Charlie Kohler on the board.
I know. Isaiah likely gets 2, including an unbelievable play by Lamar Jackson, who runs around and somehow finds him in the back of the end zone. Just a ridiculous play by Lamar. Likely comes down with the ball. It's he ends up with 2 touchdowns on the day. Charlie Kohler gets 1. Mark Andrews.
Signs of life.
There were signs of life. He caught a couple of balls.
Yeah, he was out there.
He got tackled at the he came at the 2. So he came close to getting a score, which maybe the narrative is different if that gets in. But still, he played less than 60% of the snaps, which is, more than he has the last 2 weeks. But still, not Mark Andrews that you drafted.
Yeah, I think the only takeaway on the Ravens side is that there is the hope from a fantasy perspective, if you have these Ravens, that their defense might not be amazing. Because it was amazing last year. This year, it doesn't seem like it is. They've got the 22nd ranked defense by EPA so far. Now, they've had to play Mahomes, Allen, and Burrow, who might be the other 3 best quarterbacks on planet Earth.
Yeah.
But it hasn't been the dominant unit that it was last year, so I don't think they're going to have as much game script. Lamar was just able to take 4th quarters off last year. And now, I think with the defense meaning that he has to play a bit more, I think, if you tell me he's healthy the rest of the way, Lamar Jackson's the #1 player in fantasy this season, I think.
Yeah, I would agree with you.
Yeah, I mean, that's always been the question with Lamar, never about the talent. It's always about can he stay healthy. So we'll see if he can as well. Bengals should have won this game. Bad snap. Again, when you count on the Bengals, they bone you. Everyone knows this, right? I feel so bad for their fans. It's awful. Can you imagine, hey, we finally got a chance here, and then the holder can't get the ball down for the field goal kick, a game they should have won.
I'm not sure you should be playing for a 53-yard field goal or whatever it was at the end. Pretty conservative from Zach Taylor. I get it.
I get it with the play calling, but still, yes.
They could have fumbled the snap as well if they were kicking a 40-yarder or whatever too. But yeah, disappointing way for it to go down. I will say though, as we pivot to the Bengals, if I had an MVP vote, which I don't stunningly, but if I did have an MVP vote after 5 weeks, I think the MVP of the league so far has been Jaden Daniels 1. I think Joe Burrow might be 2, and his team is 1-4, which just shows you where their defense is at. But Burrow yesterday, Connor, I mean, that's as well as I've seen him play in a long, long time.
You couldn't miss. And what you love about this performance is that it wasn't just riding the offense through Jamar Chase. It was how good T. Higgins was.
Yeah.
And if you're a Bengals fan or a fantasy player that rosters one of these 3 guys, including Burrow with the 2 wide receivers, this is your dream, Matthew, is that he can elevate and carry 2 number 1 wide receivers at once.
Now, obviously, this was sort of a crazy game. You know, Burrow throws for almost 400 yards. He attempts 39 passes. He has 5 touchdown passes, long one to Chase as well. But T. Higgins has a 35% target share over the last 2 games, multiple red zone targets in 2 out of the 3 games he's played so far this year. Jamar Chase is going to be Jamar Chase, but as we enter Monday Night Football, Chase obviously the number 1 wide receiver in fantasy. He's now scored in 3 straight games, 5 touchdowns over that stretch. But T. Higgins is wide receiver 4. As we enter into tonight. And given the defense, this is not a fluke. We know both wide receivers are super talented. We know Burrow is super talented, proud Fantasy Life investor Joe Burrow. And we also know that because of their defense, they're going to continually have to throw. Over the last 4 games, Joe Burrow has had 4 straight games with at least 2 touchdown passes. He's the 2nd best quarterback in fantasy over the last 4 games, 23.2 fantasy points per game. That's what he's averaging. By the way, Zach Moss gets banged up in this game as well, so maybe we have more clarity on the running back situation as the week goes on.
Our next game, Jacksonville gets a much-needed win over the Colts, 37-34. Another shootout, a get-right performance for Trevor Lawrence, who completes 28 of 34 for 371 yards, 2 touchdowns. But I think more importantly than that, Matthew, Brian Thomas Jr. goes for over 120 yards and a touchdown. He is the legitimate number 1 wide receiver of this offense.
I know what the answer would be, but if I said to you, I want to draft starting today, and you can only pick rookies. You can only pick rookies. Jaden Daniels probably goes 1, right? Malik Neighbors probably goes 2.
Yes.
But I think there's an argument that you take Brian Thomas over Marvin Harrison Jr. at this point. Again, another bad game from Harrison. By bad game, I mean just fantasy-wise, he just didn't put up a lot of numbers here.
2 catches, 36 yards,
right.
and around that.
Yeah, I mean, Brian Thomas has at least a 20% target share 4 to 5 games this season. He's averaging 18 yards per reception. Like, he is getting down the field, and they are chucking into him now back-to-back games with 20 or more fantasy points as Trevor Lawrence is running into form, and Trevor hasn't been exactly where we hope he would be, but still, he's been good enough to get the ball to BTJ.
Well, Jacksonville's defense stinks, so they're throwing all the time, which is helping a guy that his average yards, per route run, when you just look at his style of play with the speed, the trust he's already formed, this is going to happen all year. This isn't a hot stretch or anything fluky. Brian Thomas Jr. is such an interesting prospect because he shared an offense with Malik Neighbors, with Jaden Daniels under center, that he still had over 1,000 yards, but playing in another offense where he's the number 1, playing across from anyone else besides Malik Neighbors, he probably would have 1,500 yards as a prospect.
He's made Gabe Davis completely irrelevant as you see the Next Gen Stats there. For those of you just listening at home, it's saying the Next Gen Stats tweet says Brian Thomas Jr. reached a top speed of 22.15 miles per hour on his 85-yard touchdown reception from Trevor Lawrence. That's the fastest speed by a ball carrier this season, the fastest play by a Jaguars ball carrier in the Next Gen Stats era.
Yeah, I will say, though, he was almost eclipsed in the same game by Joe Flacco, who, by Next Gen Stats, allegedly flirted with Usain Bolt's Beijing 100-meter sprint record with the way that he was getting to the left sideline.
Don't you dare besmirch Next Gen Stats.
I'm just saying, Joe Flacco, apparently the fastest man on earth. He does move surprisingly well for a statuesque older man.
I've heard that about myself.
Yes.
Yeah.
Indeed, yeah. As we were making our way to our gate this morning, Matthew was really turning on the turbojets. I think that with Brian Thomas, look, the refrain against Brian Thomas, who, by the way, is 6th in the entire NFL in receiving yards, the refrain against him will be that he's dependent on these long touchdowns and these big long plays, which aren't as sustainable or repeatable. He's not getting like the 14 targets that Malik Neighbors will sometimes get. My refrain to that refrain would be that he's gotten completely screwed out of 2 50-yard touchdowns that he should have had.
Right.
The one against Ramsey in the end zone where he gets the DPI in week 1, and then Trevor Lawrence last week missed him wide open on a bomb touchdown. So, yes, I think that evens out. And, yes, 6th in receiving yards, and he's the clear number 1 option for a quarterback who Trevor Lawrence has his flaws, but he can certainly service a number 1 wide receiver.
And listen, under Doug Peterson, it is a pass-first offense. Former NFL quarterback, former Andy Reid disciple, Doug Peterson. They've always been pass-first. We'll talk about Tank Bigsby here in a second. But given their defense and their struggles, they're always going to be like a negative game script. I mean, good. They beat the Colts. Like, I mean, you know what I mean? Like
Joe Flacco.
I mean, right? I mean, the comeback player of the year, Joe Flacco. Could Joe Flacco win comeback player of the year for a second time in a row? Because he looked pretty darn good out there.
Not on any planet that I'll be living on, Matthew. I'll tell you that much right now. No.
You have too much to live for, Jay. You have young children. Stop it.
Yeah,
if Joe Flacco wins the second comeback player of the year,
still
it is what
things to
it
live
is.
for.
There's
other things to live for.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
DeMar Hamlin, third year.
Yeah.
You can bet on him in the third year.
He'll get done by Mike Lennon next season when he comes back. No, I think that'll be someone else. Kirk Cousins, Nick Chubb, J.K. Dobbins, someone else, for the love of God.
Anyone.
Elsewhere in this offense.
But, yeah, I mean, Brian Thomas, I'm just trying to think that, Brian Thomas is not only, we said this last week. Last week I said he's a top 20, locked in, I don't care who he's playing every week starter. Now he might be like top 15.
Yeah.
I mean, like he's legit. And if I was in a I don't know, I might even do this in a dynasty league, but I'm just saying, definitely in a this year, if somebody offered me Marvin Harrison Jr. for Brian Thomas, I would not do it. I think I'd rather have Thomas the rest of the season than MHJ. It's close.
It is close.
But
it's
Garrett
gonna
Wilson?
be week by week. Well, Garrett Wilson just had 22 targets.
That's true. Probably take Garrett.
Bad week for that.
Bad
Last
week
week,
for that.
yes.
But like we'll see what he does tonight. But like
Devontae,
if he has a down game tonight, like Brian Thomas over Chris Olave.
Maybe.
I'd rather
That's a
have
really
Brian
interesting
Thomas,
one.
you know? But like that's the range we're talking about. Like again, like I think if you redrafted today, he's a top 15 wide receiver.
Yeah.
Anyway.
50-1 for offensive rookie of the year, which it's probably going to be
crazy
Jaden
to
Daniels. That price is too long, though.
Well, we talked about it last week. It's if you have a Jaden Daniels ticket you feel great about, that's your insurance ticket.
Yes.
50 to 1.
Especially because they're not going to, once Jaden Daniels wins MVP, like they're not going
Somebody
to
else
give him
has to get
someone
Rookie of
else
the
has
Year.
offensive rookie of the year.
I'm not sure it'll work like
Really
that.
makes
I'll always
sense.
give him both.
You might just get both. But
Yeah, maybe he gets both. Maybe
elsewhere in
it's
this
too small.
offense, Tank Bigsby has taken over the backfield. 13 carries, over 100 yards, 2 touchdowns. He also caught a pass for 28 yards. We got to hear from Tank after the game on a touchdown run that was just outright ridiculous.
Like sometimes when you make a big play, your mind go blank and your instincts take over. So when those opportunities come upon, like you don't know your instincts take over. So but afterwards, it come back to reality, and you get down, you see, I'm like, dang, I just scored, and you go out, I give my mom the ball, and it felt great.
That's awesome.
Yeah, Tank Bigsby, he's been one of the stories in fantasy this year in a backfield that we thought was solidified with Travis Etienne, Matthew.
He played one more snap than Travis Etienne, played 40% of the snaps. That's a season high. He has now led the Jaguars in rushing in 3 out of the 5 games this year. He's averaging 8 yards per carry. By the way, Travis Etienne, 4.4. And he leads all running backs in avoided tackle rate and yards after contact per attempt this season. Some of they're a little bit judgmenty, but to the eye test, Tank Bigsby looks like the better running back to me, Connor.
He does. He's running through tacklers. That was really his profile coming out of Auburn, was he was a guy that you wanted to grind out the tough yards. You didn't know if he'd develop as a pass catcher or if he'd be this home run hitter, but he can create his own yards past the line of scrimmage because he's tough and can run through contact. And Jaguars are obviously rewarding him, seeing that come to fruition, Jay.
Yeah, it's funny. The Coach Speak Index, which is a great Twitter follow, they talked about how Doug Peterson was asked if Tank Bigsby will replace Travis Etienne atop the depth chart. Peterson said, no, not at all. Travis is our guy. Tank had a good game. That's just the way games go, which is followed by the statement that Doug Peterson has a 35% reliability rating.
For sure, Doug Peterson's fighting for his job, and Tank Bigsby gives him a better chance. They're still using Etienne in the passing game, but Tank Bigsby is absolutely a thing, and I mean he's got at least 50% of this backfield share, and probably more coming.
On the other side of this game, old friend Joe Flacco drops back 44 times. He completes 33 passes, 359 yards, 3 touchdowns. Another good week for Josh Downs, Matthew. Caught 9 of 12 targets for 69 yards.
We talked about him. You talked about him last week, as you said you thought he was the best guy on the most talented wide receiver on this team. Not even particularly close. 19 points per game over the past 2 weeks. Team high, 29% target share since he returned from injury in week 3. We think the guy's a stud, and it'll be interesting to see what happens when Richardson comes back. But as long as a professional drop-back, pure passer like Joe Flacco is under center, Downs is going to get fed.
Yeah, definitely. Look, Flacco is excellent pocket passer. This is what he stands in the pocket and he just flings it. And when he goes up against suspect defenses like the Jags, who have the worst pass defense in the NFL statistically this season, he's going to light them up. Now, I think it's matchup dependent. If he does play against the Titans, that's a tougher matchup. The Titans
on
have
the road
sneaky
at the
good
Titans.
defense.
Yep.
And he'll have Tavondre Sweat and Jeffrey Simmons coming up the middle at him. That might be a bit more difficult.
Yes.
One last thing to note from this game, why Jonathan Taylor was out. Trey Sermon was effective in fantasy, over 18 points, and a lot of that, Matthew, was the 6 catches he added.
Yeah, I mean, this is sort of like feels like a running back version of Wan'Dale Robinson, right? Like he got 6 receptions for 25 yards, right? He gets 10 rushes for 38 yards, but he does get into the end zone here, as you pointed out, Jay. They're on the road at Tennessee next week. I don't really necessarily like it, but again, if Jonathan Taylor misses next week, Trey Sermon clearly the guy. Out-touched Tyler Goodson 16-8, including all 4 goal line rushes went to Trey Sermon as well. Actually got a 13% target share in this game. Joe Flacco not scared to dump it down. I don't think Trey Sermon's anything special, but I think he's, in terms of volume, serviceable. Again, tougher matchup coming up against Tennessee.
Our next game here, Houston beats the Bills. Houston at home, they win 23-20 on a game that Sean McDermott kind of put on a platter for them at the end. The big storyline coming out of this one was Nico Collins leaving the game early, did not return with a hamstring injury after he scored a 67-yard touchdown. We got to hear from D'Amico Ryans after the game on Collins' injury and Stephon Diggs stepping up in his place. Take a listen.
And the update there on Nico. Nico on the long passing touchdown. He felt his hammy grab, so he has a hammy. We'll evaluate him day to day. Yeah, we were really happy for Diggs. You know how important this win was for him. You know how important this week was for him. Anytime you're going against your old team, like a lot of guys knew we had to get this one for Diggs. Try not to make a big deal out of it throughout the entire week. But we know it, right? It's emotional. Today, for us, man, he made some really big catches on third down to keep drives moving. Like, play after play, Diggs stepped up and made plays. So I'm happy for him that we were able to get this win for him.
Jay, obviously, Nico Collins leaves the game, and it's Stephon Diggs that steps up. Not a ton from Tank Dell in this one.
No, still not a lot from Tank Dell. He had a couple of nice plays, but nothing super substantive. I think the key here is just that Nico, apparently the diagnosis is pretty solid. It's day-to-day. Expectations he may be able to play this week. It's a little bit of a concern when you get a hamstring injury and you can't come back into a close game after he was hampered by it in practice during the week. But look, the story like Nico Collins, he played, I think, 5 snaps. He goes 2 for 78 in the long touchdown. I mean, I think the rest of the season, if he is healthy and fine, I mean, he's in the discussion to be the number 1 overall wide receiver. It'd be him, Jefferson, Chase. Like, he's right there with all those guys.
I am, and I haven't had a chance to go back and watch the film of this game specifically. But my assumption is just from what I did watch of the game, and also just looking at that box score, who are the big target leaders? Stephon Diggs, Dario Ogunbowale. Dario Ogunbowale got 6 targets in this game. My assumption is that the Bills mostly just played back. They didn't want to get beat over the top the way they did on that one Nico Collins play. Tank Dell gets limited by that, and so Diggs, who's been playing mostly the slot, Ogunbowale, like sort of dump-offs there, just felt like the underneath stuff was what was available to the Texans. I'm not ready to panic just yet on Tank Dell. It's been bad. He's been banged up. He, has just an 11% target share in this game. He's averaging under 8 fantasy points per game this season. He has only one game with more than 40 receiving yards, but certainly back from the injury, first game back. They're at New England next week. You'd expect Christian Gonzalez to be on Nico Collins, assuming Nico Collins is back. We'll track that injury. So maybe there's some opportunities for Tank Dell. But yeah. I get it. It's been a slow start for our guy Tank. Yeah, the second best tank in the NFL at the moment.
That's right.
Yeah, it's upsetting.
Indeed. I do think this Texans offense is going to look different when Joe Mixon comes back and is healthy. Yeah. Because this team has only really played one game at full strength. That was in week 1, where they ran Joe Mixon 1,000,000 times. I think that's the identity Bobby Sloak wants to have. Now Nico and Stephon Diggs are still going to get theirs. We'll have to see about Tank Dell's role.
The good news from the Bills side, a lot of volume for James Cook, 20 carries, 82 yards, and a touchdown. He also caught 2 passes. The bad news is, Matthew, it's one of the worst games we've ever seen from a passing perspective for Josh Allen.
I mean, look, Josh Allen is my quarterback in the league of assholes. Thank you, Jaden Daniels, for keeping me alive there. But, Josh Allen last week got under 8 fantasy points, right? And I lost by 0.14 to this asshole. And then I got slapped like a grape. I got slapped like a grape by Jay Croucher. Yeah, 1,000%, because Josh Allen had a bad game last week. And now I'm probably going to lose to Lawrence Jackson because Josh Allen has another bad game. Career low 30% completion rate. 27% of his passes were off target. He's averaging 11 fantasy points per game over the past 2 weeks. He's now been under 15 fantasy points in 3 of 5 games. Obviously, 30 plus in the other 2. Like, when Josh Allen's going right, there's no better quarterback in fantasy football. He is the man, but it's been you wouldn't expect 2 bad games in an entire season from Josh Allen, let alone back-to-back. And so it's a little concerning for sure. Now, no Khalil Shakir in this game, but still, that shouldn't,
That's
he's Josh
problematic.
Allen.
Right.
He's Josh Allen.
The reality is, like, you just can't go 9 for 30 in a dome. It makes no sense at all. I think there were concerns about the Bills' offense. Well, not concerns, but there were questions about the Bills' offense going into the season. New era, no Stephon Diggs, a lot of kind of bit pieces who we would see, worried about the lack of a deep threat. And then Allen in particular lit up Arizona and Jacksonville, and he moved into MVP favorite. Turns out that those two have 2 of the 6 worst pass defenses in the NFL. He didn't actually do that much against Miami. They killed them on the ground, and then the past 2 weeks have been a huge struggle.
Yeah, look, they're at the Jets next week. Although
For first place in the AFC East. The illustrious AFC
Have you
East.
forgotten about the Miami Dolphins, who are 1 game out of the division lead in the AFC East? as
I
well?
have because they're playing Tyler Huntley at the moment.
Whatever they want,
that game is legitimately for first place, though.
Yeah, I know. I know it is. But listen, the
Dolphins lost the Bills.
the Dolphins got a W yesterday, which we can't say for the Jets.
Hey,
We
Tua
cannot say that for the
might be
Jets.
back in 2 games.
We can't say that for the Jets or the Bills. The Dolphins were the AFC East team that won yesterday. They were the only ones.
Scratched one out.
So it all looks
The
the
AFC
same in
East
the box
is
score.
dreadful right
It all
now.
looks the same in the box score. Hopefully they get this all figured out. I don't know that there's a takeaway because you're still starting Josh Allen.
My question for you is, what about Dalton Kincaid? This is where I'm concerned.
Yeah, I'm still, again, when you go 9 for 30 and only pass for 131 yards, it's going to affect you, right? But so it's been tough with Kincaid. But if there's a positive, and there's not much, but he's had at least a 20% target share in 3 of the past 4 games. But yeah, you're right. Since week 1 was the last time that he had an 80% route participation. He's averaging under 8 fantasy points per game this season. Hasn't had a game with more than 50 yards. And so it's only the fact that the tight end position is so brutal, and because we do expect this Bills offense to get better, that we're sort of keeping the flame on for Dalton Kincaid. But he's much more of a lower-end tight end one than the top 5 guy he was drafted as.
And one of the biggest upsets of the week, the Cardinals beat the 49ers 24-23. Kyler Murray, really the big day on the ground with the 50-yard touchdown run. Ride or Die had 7 rushes, 83 yards. He also completed 19-30 for 195 yards and a touchdown.
Yeah.
Quiet for Marvin Harrison Jr., despite the good Kyler Murray day.
Back-to-back games now with under 50 yards. His 23% target share was his lowest since week 1. It felt like the Niners made an effort to take him out of the game, and so Kyler was taking what they were giving him, right? So he was running. It was a weird game. They had some weird weird turnovers, and some of the possessions and the drives were weird. But let's hear it for the Ride or Die. And what's interesting? I'll just very quickly. This is more of a football conversation than a fantasy one, but I know the Chiefs are undefeated, but they don't scare you, and we'll talk about the game coming up here. The Bills have flaws. We just talked about how brutal the AFC East is, that 2 teams that just lost are playing for first place in the AFC East. Baltimore, we're not sure about their defense, or Cincinnati's defense. Pittsburgh just got exposed last night.
Vikings are 5-0, and it's just you're waiting around for the
I'm just saying, it just
losing streak is
it
coming.
just feels like in previous years we're like, well, we know the Super Bowl champion is going to be whoever comes out of the AFC, and now you sort of feel like, maybe this is an NFC year, because it just feels like every single AFC team that you could point at, you sort of say, well, but what about that flaw?
I think it's Baltimore.
I was just going to say,
team.
I'm the most comfortable with the Ravens.
Which is fair if Lamar stays healthy and they got that defense figured out.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Again, it's not as dominant as it has been. Because they shut down the Bills last week, but how impressive is that now that we've seen, maybe the Bills aren't that good?
It's the NFL. There's just a lot of parity, which is a great thing as we were in the middle of October. On the 49ers side of this, finally, the Brandon Aiyuk game catches 8 of 12 targets, 147 yards. George Kittle has a big day as well.
We talked about both these guys on Fantasy Football pregame. Both of them made the love list as well. We were like, hey, Brandon Aiyuk is due, and there's no question he absolutely was. Finally, almost a 38% target share. Played a season high in snaps as well, 92%. Brandon Aiyuk is out there. Good things generally happen as well. First game this year with double-digit fantasy points. Very nice to see as well. Kittle, he's now very quietly, he's now scored in 3 straight games. He's averaging over 18 fantasy points per game during that stretch. 12 targets in this one as well. Tight ends generally do well against Arizona. Kittle himself specifically does well against Arizona, but still, in a land in which there are so many tight ends doing absolutely nothing, it's nice to see some consistency from George Kittle, friend of the podcast.
Thought you were going to go with the one-eyed, the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king.
I was going to do
the land of.
I was waiting for it.
I get terrified every time you say land.
I was going
you had
to
to tee
wait
up.
for it. I know, but then I faked you out and I made you say it.
We both are
you
waiting
made
for
say
it.
it, and I made you say it. That's because I'm over here playing chess, not checkers.
Oh,
That's
man.
right.
Niners are 2 and 3,
Jane
Matthew.
nuts.
The Niners are 2 and 3.
They
It's
might be the
crazy.
second, third best team in football. Maybe they're the best team in football. I don't understand how they've lost any of these games, particularly the Rams one and this one. This is one of those ones where I was just walking along in Pittsburgh along the street, checking the box score, and then I see that the Niners are kicking on 4th and 23 from the Arizona 27, not realizing that they don't have a kicker anymore. And it's just one of those games where everything went wrong. Purdy wasn't great in this game. Aiyuk was great that he got back on track. Disappointing Jordan Mason didn't get any work in the receiving world after he did the previous week. But look, I think the Niners, it's a pretty stable situation. You're starting Aiyuk, Debo, Kittle, Mason, Purdy, no real changes.
I would agree with all that, though. You mentioned Jake Moody does get hurt. For leagues that are playing with kickers, Moody's a popular one, so you will have to replace him as well. They're the Thursday night game at Seattle. Then they're home to Kansas City, home to Dallas, and a bye. The next 3 are no easy. They have to travel on a short week to a desperate Seahawks team that just got embarrassed by the Giants. I think they probably win that especially, but still, you don't love that gauntlet. Seahawks, Chiefs, Dallas. For a 2 and 3 team, right? They're 2 and 3, right?
Yeah,
they're 2 and 3.
If they lose at Seattle, they're like 3-point favorites in that game, so it's a coin flip, slight favorites, and then they got to play Patrick Mahomes. So the Niners should be 2 and 5. It's not inconceivable. They're gonna have a worse record than the Giants after that.
It's like
My New York Giants.
They're slow starters.
Heroic in victory in the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. Anyway,
Our last game.
Yeah.
Packers at the
man.
Rams. Packers win 24-19. Josh Jacobs gets 19 carries for 73 yards and a touchdown. Tucker Kraft has emerged as a legit tight end 1 in fantasy right now.
This is another one. He was on the love list, and we talked about him on Fantasy Football pregame. What we talked about was the fact that he had taken over this job from Luke Musgrave. We liked the matchup against the Rams, who had struggled against tight ends. We talked about all the routes he'd been running, all the route participation he'd had. Tucker Kraft gets a 20% target share. It's his 4th straight game above 15%. It's a season high for him. And he's now, very quietly, the 5th best tight end in fantasy on a points-per-game basis. So on offense, we like quarterback by Jordan Love, no Christian Watson, no Romeo Doubs, so a more narrow target tree and a good matchup. Made sense that Tucker Kraft, we didn't expect 2 touchdowns, but there's a reason he was on the love list this week.
Yeah, definitely. Jaden Reed continues to be a monster of sorts in terms of at least per play and per target, but just 6 targets as well. For Jaden Reed to break into that next sphere of player of being a proper wide receiver 1 in fantasy, needs to start seeing double-digit targets. Just not sure that's going to happen consistently in this offense. Dontavian Wicks kind of fell on his face from a statistical standpoint. He did get 7 targets, which bodes well going forward. I think that Wicks and Reed both startable every week that Christian
Yeah, I mean,
Watson's
Wicks
out.
is a tough one. That also on the love list, as long as I'm patting myself on the back. I should also be honest about that, did not have a good game. Wide receiver 69 from the love list. But to your point, he did get 7 targets. He did have a 28% target share. We expect him to come down with more than 2 balls if he gets 7 targets as well. It was also a weird game. Jordan Love didn't play great. There were some bad turnovers. Big Josh Jacobs game. He got 19 rushing attempts in this one as well. So better days ahead for Dontavian Wicks. I believe in the talent, and obviously the role is there. Just didn't work out for him on Sunday.
Love has some Favre in him. He really does.
A little bit.
He is really wild sometimes,
Yeah.
and it's probably great in fantasy.
Yeah.
Because it leads to awesome production, also leads to wild turnovers.
Yep. Had a good conversation with a Cowboys fan at the Steelers game about where Dak Prescott ranks among quarterbacks. And I was after the Jordan Love yesterday, I was like, I think I'll take Dak over Jordan Love. Real football. Fantasy-wise, maybe Love because of the volatility and the Favreness. Perhaps he's more valuable there. But yeah, it hasn't been a great. All 3 games are wild.
Dak played terrible last night. I mean,
I know, but
he was good on the last
second
drive.
in MVP last year. He's still, you got to bake that into his offensive line struggling.
There were some bad turnovers. Pittsburgh had no business losing that game.
Dak's
bad
good.
turnovers.
Dak's
Dak
good.
is good.
Yeah, he's the 9th to 11th best quarterback in the league.
Dak, you know what Dak is Kirk Cousins. Dak is good, not great.
Yeah.
He's never going to be great, but he's good. He's above average. He's an above average NFL quarterback. We don't know yet. Jordan Love could be great.
Oh, Jordan Love.
That's my argument.
Jordan Love
my
could
argument
be an
is
MVP.
that we have seen Dak's ceiling.
Yeah.
And Dak's ceiling's very, very good. I agree with you. He's a top 12 quarterback in real life in the NFL.
Yeah, Jordan Love has the ceiling to be the top 3 quarterback.
Yes.
He has that in.
Yes, and I don't think Dak does. I think at this point, one thing. Now the Rams are on a bye, but it's worth noting that Jordan Whittington, who we talked up a lot both last Tuesday and the Tuesday before on the waiver wire, we've talked about it. 10 targets, 7 for 89. A lot of it came late in the game when they were in comeback mode, but he's averaging over 14 points over the last 2 weeks, 24.3% target share. He's a proud member of Live at Noon on the Cock. He did his best to keep me in the game. Unfortunately, he's in a sling. He apparently got a shoulder injury. Again, they're on a bye this week, so hopefully coming out of it, he's okay. News came out, by the way, over the weekend, if you missed it, that the expectation is Cooper Kupp will return in Week 7 after the Rams bye. So lots to shake out in terms of LA's receiving core, but help's on the way.
Excited to welcome Cooper Kupp, who I traded for with Connor in the League of Arseholes, onto the field for the Grape Slappers. Just add the rich get richer, Matthew.
I know.
The juggernauts get more juggernauty.
Yes.
Baker Mayfield's our new captain.
Yeah, he's just playing your team.
Want to know it, Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, meanwhile, I'm sitting here hoping Rashee Rice.
You got to make moves.
It's
Nobody's going to trade with you.
I know that's the problem.
No one is going to trade with you.
I've got all these injuries. Rashee Rice. That was a killer to me.
Yeah, that's fine. That's Christian McCaffrey. No worries. Still, the train rolls on.
Yeah, well, you have Jordan Mason. It doesn't count.
Because it was well drafted, well prepared. I give credit for that.
Some injuries we're tracking from Week 5. Devon Achane has a scary concussion. Nico Collins, we already talked about, he left the game with the hamstring. Aaron Jones came out of the game in London with a hip injury, did not play the entire second half. And Aaron Jones, unfortunately, has been hurt basically every year the last couple of years. We'll have more news on that one throughout the week. Rodgers finished the game. He has a low ankle sprain. They have an extra day of rest. He said he expects to play on Monday.
Yep. Also, we can pretend that Josh Allen didn't get a concussion. Josh Allen was concussed.
Josh Allen was sleeping on the
turf.
turf.
He may play this week. We'll see. He came back in, obviously, but that was.
Yeah.
I should have smelling salts just on the desk.
Yeah, maybe.
Not to make light of it, but really. And the NFL made light of it, so.
It's weird. It was a weird one.
I think there's more to come.
Probably, I would think so, because it was high profile game, and everyone was like, oh well, he's got to get checked out, and one more play comes in, and you're like, well,
yeah, and it wasn't great when he came back, by the way.
It was
scary moment. So, by the way, on some good news to come out of this show, America eats wings for free today.
Oh, really?
Yes. Wow. You could first thank Andrew Van Ginkel had a pick six.
Yeah.
And there was 2 more pick sixes after that.
So explain why America eats wings for free. This is thanks to our friends at Applebee's right here. As you know, the show is served by Applebee's. We love ourselves some Applebee's, and they have this new promotion, Connor.
They certainly do. This year marks the first season that Applebee's is the official grill plus bar sponsor of the NFL. And to help celebrate, Applebee's just kicked off its new Applebee's Pick Six Mondays. This football season, a pick six during any NFL Sunday game will unlock 6 free boneless wings the next day on Monday at Applebee's for both dine-in and to go. And not only did we get a pick six yesterday, we got 3.
Yeah.
Now, you're not getting 18 wings. You're still getting 6. But head to your local Applebee's today and be sure to say your friends at the happy hour sent you. That is Connor, Jay, and Matthew.
Or you can say your friend Matthew. And
your acquaintances,
my coworkers, my colleagues,
associates.
My
associates is like the lowest.
My minions.
Yeah,
his minions sent you.
Fellow line items on the NBC HR chart. Yeah, Dan Connor.
There we go.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, they sent you. But you go and you watch the Monday Night Football game at Applebee's. You get some free wings.
That's right. We're coming back with Weekend Warriors and Sunday Scaries after this. Yeah. Sunday night, Joe Burrow and the Bengals look to get back on track as they head to New York to face the Giants in the prime time spotlight. Sunday, 7 Eastern on NBC and Peacock. I can already hear backup producer Pete convincing us the Giants are winning this game.
I can already hear people saying, like, thank God for betting in fantasy, because that's why that game's going to be super interesting.
No, Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, Daniel Jones, Darius Slayton.
Maybe we get Malik Neighbors back. Hopefully we get Malik Neighbors back.
That's a big
Malik Neighbors versus Jamar Chase is going to be pretty cool.
Yep. They're only 3-point dogs, the New York Giants. They're a competent team.
Dable's coaching for his job right now, and it looks like it. It was a big win for the Giants.
Yeah. That was a huge win for the Giants. Huge win. Our guy, Tyrone Tracy. Let's go. Come on now.
It was nice.
Yeah,
it was real nice.
nice.
Clearly the best running back on the Giants. Just took Devin Singletary to get hurt to play him.
Yeah.
Weekend Warriors, starting with Garrett Wilson, who just had a wild day in terms of target share. 22 targets for Garrett Wilson. He caught 13 of them for over 100 yards and a touchdown. I mean, Matthew, if you drafted Garrett Wilson in the first round, you've finally got a reward.
This is what you expected when you drafted Garrett Wilson, was that he was going to be an alpha wide receiver that Aaron Rodgers was going to look for early and often, and not throw to Alan Lazard.
Right.
But
he dropped 4 passes yesterday, by the way.
Of course he did.
On 10 targets.
There you go.
So
Dropped
statistically
4 passes.
wasn't
So
counting,
just
but-
in terms of his contract, it's just $10 million per drop it's economical when you. Well, anyway, don't get me started. But what I will say is
Had a
that
touchdown, by the way.
Yeah, of course
He
he
also
did.
dropped one that probably could have been the difference in the game.
Yeah. But second best fantasy game of his career, most targets in a game since 2015, and Antonio Brown had 23 there. But a ridiculous 43% target share. There's a lot of reasons why the Jets lost that game. Garrett Wilson ain't one of them. Hopefully they continue to feed him.
Things just look better with them,
Yeah.
which is what you've been waiting for. Jay, how about Caleb Williams having the best start of his young career? Completes 20 at 29, over 300 yards, 2 touchdowns. He ran a little bit. Caleb looked really comfortable yesterday.
Maybe I'll have a big bet on Caleb Williams for an Offensive Rookie of the Year and come in with my Bears jersey on Mondays opposite your Commanders jerseys.
By all
They're
means.
going head-to-head in a couple of weeks, by the way.
gonna be great.
That's going to be an epic. I think this is a hugely positive sign combined with last week as well, where Caleb was a little bit better, and then the week before that where he had 360-plus yards against the Colts. Just the fact that he's able to put up this type of volume, this is the type of stuff like Bo Nix hasn't been able to do, that Bryce Young wasn't able to do last season. And so Caleb doing this, hyper-efficient, advanced stats amazing. The touchdown pass to DJ Moore was next level type of stuff. This is what we wanted to see from Caleb Williams. Hugely encouraging.
300 yards passing in 2 of his last 3 games, by the way. Now, he was doing it against the Carolina Panthers, and he was at home. But, to your point, they're home to Jacksonville next week. Then they get a bye, which is always nice for rookie quarterbacks,
London,
sort of
right?
reset and everything like that. Then they're at Washington, whose defense is still not it's been good the last 2 weeks, but it hadn't been great, and then at Arizona. So the schedule there plays out nicely, I think, for Caleb Williams to continue fantasy production. DJ Moore, obviously, a big beneficiary in a revenge game against the Panthers.
Darius Slayton also makes our weekend Warriors. No Malik Neighbors. It felt like all the targets shifted over to Slayton, Matthew.
Yeah.
11 of them. He caught 8 of them for 122 yards and a touchdown in a game where Daniel Jones looked fine.
Yeah, by the way, almost a 36% target share. Daniel Jones was totally fine. Really nice win for the Giants on the road at Seattle. Embarrassing loss for the Seattle that they let Darius Slayton. They're playing against backups, right? So they got Tyrone Tracy.
Ran
all over him. Ran great. You got Slayton as well. Wan'Dale Robinson does his thing. Theo Johnson. I mean,
all their young players got a chance. Tracy, Theo.
Produced as well. Yeah. Quiet game from DK Metcalf in terms of what was expected of him. So, good for Darius Slayton. But I don't, unless Malik Neighbors is out again, I think this is something you ignore. We'll talk about more of this tomorrow.
Yep. By the way, you take out week 1 against the Vikings, who might have the best defense in football. EPA per play, Daniel Jones has been the 6th most efficient quarterback in football. Now, I don't think he's the 6th best quarterback in football, but he is competent and he can get the ball to these
He's not a
guys.
disaster.
Yeah.
He's not
fine.
a disaster.
He's fine.
Yeah.
And we also got to give him some kind of, nod here that he's shaking off rust from a season-ending injury last year.
And he's, I mean, whatever. He made Darius Slayton a thing, but he's got one weapon. Yeah. And, I mean,
2 now with Tyrone Tracy.
I guess, yeah.
Jay, how about Brock Bowers? Catches 8 of 12 targets, 97 yards and a touchdown in a wasteland for tight end. Brock Bowers is shining.
Well, yeah, the Las Vegas Raiders right now are a bit of a wasteland. Just overall, don't know what their quarterback situation is going to be. I don't think it matters. The key for Brock Bowers is not so much the 97 yards and the touchdown, the fact he's getting 12 targets as a tight end. Like this guy, I think he's a top 3 tight end, top 3 to 4 tight ends in the league the rest of the way. And yeah, like I said, quarterback, whether it's AOC or Gardner Minshew, Brock Bowers is going to be the number 1 weapon in that offense.
Yeah, he is. I don't know that there's a tight end I'd rather have than Brock Bowers the rest of the way. Like, if you were redrafting today, who's your number 1 tight end that you're drafting?
Brock Bowers. Yeah, it's Brock Bowers.
I think so. I mean, we haven't seen a lot from,
Laporta's been disappointing.
Laporta's been disappointing. Trey McBride has. Kincaid, Kelsey.
Everyone else is just inconsistent. It's 1 hot week, 2 bad weeks.
There's just very few tight ends who are the number 1 guy on an NFL offense.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's move over to Sunday Scaries. We started with Garrett Wilson for Weekend Warriors, but his teammate Breece Hall tops the Sunday Scaries list. Matthew, the Jets can't run the ball right now.
Yeah, what's going on here?
They can't run the ball.
Is that what it is?
And Breece doesn't look confident. Even there was a couple times where it was blocked up yesterday, and he was not hitting the hole. It was notable.
Is Breece Hall still an every week must starter next week at home against Buffalo, then at Pittsburgh, at New England, home to Houston, back-to-back games with only 12 touches, third straight game with a target share below 15%. He's averaging 3 yards per carry this season, Connor. Over his last 2 games, he's averaging 5.3 fantasy points per game. Next week, if you have Breece Hall on your team, I don't care who else I have on my team, or are you at least thinking about it for a second?
I think you got to ride it out. It's just, he was getting touchdown equity in the beginning of the year, the first couple of weeks of the year. Rodgers will still dump the ball off at times, unless we get any news that something is bothering Breece Hall. And he does not look like the guy from last year physically, but until we get that news, I'm just going to ride it out.
I think you're right, too, but the fact that I have to ask the question sucks. This is not good. I mean, like, he's been bad. Like, if that guillotine league that I was mentioning, where I need Rashid Shaheed to have a nice game, like, it's because Breece Hall.
Yep.
Like, we're down to like
2 weeks ago.
Yeah, we're down to, it wasn't a full 18-team league, so we're down to like 6 or 7 teams, and every team is pretty good. And so to have somebody like Breece Hall get you, 6.7 fantasy points, is like, anyway.
Well, and the problem is if he doesn't get going, there's a Braylon Allen question looming. That's what's scary. It's not like we don't have anyone else.
Yeah, he's very good.
All right, Jay, how about George Pickens? Not only 7 targets, caught 3 of them, 26 yards. He wouldn't play the full snap share, which was a big storyline after this game.
Yeah, got to see the Steelers offense up close and personal in the stadium last night. Wasn't great, wasn't super exciting. And this is just the George Pickens experience. Like, I think he has more pedigree than he has actual realized NFL production. And look, you're going to get the games like last year where he goes 4 for 195 and 2 touchdowns against the Bengals. You're also just going to have to withstand these games where he's 3 for 26 and does nothing. He's just, at this point of his career, he's just an inconsistent player.
He was the same guy in college, so I don't really expect this to change, Matthew.
The only thing that could change is I think Russell Wilson's their starting quarterback next week.
Wow.
And so
declared it.
Yeah.
Wow.
By the way, you heard it on the broadcast as well. They were talking about it. I'm going to declare it. I'll declare it. I think that was awful. That was a game the Steelers should have won and didn't. And the reason they didn't was honestly Justin Fields was in a big way. And so
trade for Baker Mayfield back in our league. If I've got Justin Fields.
But to that point, if you've been using, we'll talk about Russell Wilson tomorrow on the waiver wire show. But I will say this: yes, if you've been using Justin Fields as your fantasy starting quarterback, which I get, he's still, even in a bad game, he put up 15 points last night. I think he loses his job this week.
Okay.
This division's slipping away. The way the Ravens are going, like, you can't. He lost them that game last night. He couldn't hit basic throws to convert third downs.
Wasn't great. He was good last week, though. I think they give him another week, but I don't have any inside information. I'm just going off performance.
I know they like Russ. I know they like both guys. Pittsburgh likes both guys.
It felt like whoever started, there was always going to be a quick hook to the other guy, and I felt that way if Russ started the year.
It felt like it was going to go the other way, and it's just
I thought
worked
that's
out
how it was going to happen.
Yeah. I mean, anyway, so just that's the only hope for Pickens is that maybe Russ, but it's clearly he's inconsistent, and that team, regardless who's under center, is going to run the ball. Tough game for Diontae Johnson. I'm shaking this off again. Only an 18% target share, but on the road to Chicago. That's a very tough place to play. They're at Atlanta. They're home to Atlanta next week. That should be more of a shootout. I'm hanging tough with Diontae Johnson. I'm not with Courtland Sutton, right? Third game this year with 8 or fewer fantasy points. He's averaging just 44 receiving yards per game so far this season. He's wide receiver 59. Courtland Sutton is somebody who is very touchdown dependent. And even when he's touchdown dependent, it's usually 40 yards and a touchdown. He's just not a big volume guy, and I just don't see Bo Nix getting him to fantasy relevance.
It's a training wheels offense, and you don't bet on a training wheels offense in fantasy, and Courtland Sutton, unfortunately, is stuck in one. One last one here, Jay. David Njoku catches 1 of 3 passes for 14 yards. I wouldn't want to touch anything on this Browns offense.
If you had David Njoku, you would have gotten quite a fright when the graphic flashed after Jordan Aiken scored the touchdown that David Njoku had scored the touchdown, but alas, it was not. Look, first game back, the issue is Deshaun Watson might be the worst quarterback in the NFL at the moment.
He's he's the worst starter.
Yeah. And I think he just submarines everything on that team until further notice.
All right, we're taking our last break. When we're back, last call. We got our best bets coming up for Monday Night Football. Chiefs Saints right after this. DraftKings Sportsbook is the #1 place to bet touchdowns, and new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Download the app and use promo code Barry when you sign up. DraftKings Sportsbook, the crown is yours. It's time for last call. Let's take a look at the most bet Monday Night Football props. on DraftKings right now. Patrick Mahomes passing touchdowns at 2+ is plus 100. That's number one. Travis Kelce's receiving yards over 57.5. That's minus 115. And then a lot of Mahomes passing props as well. Jay, looks like the public is all over Mahomes. What are you looking at?
I'm going for the other quarterback, the less heralded Derek Carr, over 213.5 passing yards. I think this line is a bit too infected by just his season stats this year. Like the first two games were just massive outliers where they completely blew out the Panthers and Cowboys, so they didn't need to throw. He went comfortably over last week when he finally needed to throw. And last season he averaged 228. They're 5.5-point dogs. Expected he's going to need to throw. And the Chiefs' pass defense has been merely average so far this season.
Yeah, by the way, I'm not sure why the public loves Patrick Mahomes so much. Like, he was on my hate list this week, right? Saints have allowed the fourth fewest fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks. They've allowed only one passing touchdown in 4 games this season. Now, they played some suspect quarterbacks, but still, Patrick Mahomes has under 17 fantasy points in every game so far this year, and in 9 straight dating back to last year. He's 17th in pass attempts per game. He's just lost Rashee Rice as well. I think the interesting thing to watch here from the Chiefs offense is does Kareem Hunt, who last week got 67% of the team's running back rushes and had a 10% target share. Does he continue that stranglehold on the Chiefs running back job? In terms of my best bet for tonight, I think the Saints cover the 5.5 as well. They've lost 2 straight. The Chiefs have gotten a little bit lucky. They've gotten 2 games that they should have lost that they didn't. They're 4-0. They've lost Rice, and give me the Saints are desperate. Give me the Saints. I think the Saints actually win tonight, but for my bet, I'm taking the Saints plus 5.5.
Okay, I like it.
I'll be the brave man on this test to believe in the scrappy Chiefs. I like Travis Kelce over 5.5 receptions. The Saints have not been good against tight ends this year. They've been good against receivers, but not good against tight ends. Matthew, there's just not a lot left in this Kansas City offense. A lot of people left to throw to. 5.5 for Kelce. We saw signs of life from him last week despite the slow start to the season.
No, I like that. By the way, for all of you Saints doubters out there, I just want to point out that in games this year in which when the spread is more than 5 points, underdogs are 18-4 against the spread so far. Go Saints! Who dat?
Who dat, indeed.
Who dat?
And also,
Saint up!
On the Saints side of the ball, Alvin Kamara obviously starting, Chris Olave you're obviously starting, Rashid Shaheed I think you're obviously starting as well in most leagues. He's quietly had 73+ yards in 3 of his 4 games, 11 targets last week too. He's the real deal.
He really is. I desperately need him to have either a monster game or 0 points. I can't have him have like a 7 or 8 point game.
It's kind of how he plays.
Because that's what Lawrence will beat me with. Lawrence is beating me by he only needs 5.5 points, and then but I need 12 from him in my guillotine league. So
I'll cheer for 3 for 50 then for Rashid Shaheed. No touchdowns.
That's fine. I will accept that.
Rashid Shaheed.
All right, that music means it's closing time. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. For the good people of the Pittsburgh Applebee's and Jay and Connor, I'm Matthew Berry. Go Shaheed. Go tonight. Peace out. Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and Rotoworld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched, or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest Rotoworld fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.